Welcome to the Leader Shop on Virtual Team Dynamics. Your presenter today is Samantha Damaris, a graduate intern from the Student Involvement Office in the Student Centers and Activities. Karen Ardazone, the Associate Director of Student Involvement, also helped contribute to this presentation. We want to welcome you here today and thank you for joining us. This is a video recording of a previous presentation. On the agenda today, there is multiple things. So first, we did an introduction of the host already, and we typically would do a check-in process. This would be a link that was found from Get Involved when you create an event. We recommend that you're using that for your organizations currently, but obviously since you're watching a video, we're not having you check in. We will then run through group development and dynamics, executive teamwork, team relations, team building, and additional resources and questions. If we were in person, we would have a Kahoot for you all to use. We really recommend you using Kahoots with your groups online because it's a great way to get people involved, engaged early on in a meeting, and just to have fun rather than it being that the members are talked at. So group development and dynamics. We first want to cover a theory about Tuckman's model of group development. This theory has multiple stages and shows how groups come together. So first is forming. Members join the org and have a retreat or orientation. We recommend utilizing icebreakers, identify group expectations, and reach out to new members and be inclusive. In stage 2, you have storming. It is possible that members may not respond positively to the demands of tasks. This is a time where cliques may form and ideas are criticized. Handle any conflict directly and respectfully. Be sure to listen to others and review expectations. This is natural, and so do not think this is a negative sign for your project. Stage 3 is norming. This is when the group becomes more cohesive. Roles are clear and members start working together. This is a great time to develop group identity and facilitate in-depth team building activities. Play fun social activities to maintain relations amongst the group as well. Stage 4, performing. This is when the group becomes functional and is dealing with tasks and the team has shared a vision. Teamwork begins autonomously and members are focused on achieving their goals. At this time, provide feedback, but otherwise step back and follow the members' lead to work amongst themselves. Encourage them to learn new skills and to share with others. Stage 5, the last stage, is adjourning. This is essentially when the academic year is finished and the group parts ways. Members are proud of their work and anticipate changing relationships now that the year ended. You should have a closure activity and find a way to celebrate the group. It is also important to create transition reports such as feedback, documents, and more for the incoming executive board. Overall, Tuckman's model is explaining group dynamics for the whole year, but you can also apply the stages to individual projects too. Don't be alarmed if you're still in stages 1 and 2. This is normal, especially in the virtual dynamic. Group expectations. Early on in the semester, it is important to determine the group's expectations for one another. These expectations can be a list of rules that you want to follow, such as active listening, respecting to one another, timelines of completion of tasks, or no texting at meetings. These expectations are important to determine early on as they set the tone for the year. It is also a way to include your members in the discussion about your organization, and that is important to them too. This is also time to consider your values as an organization, as you are all striving for the same goals. It is important to review your organization's mission, values with the group to be sure the group expectations align with what the year is expected to accomplish. The list of expectations can be used to guide the whole semester. You can use it as reminders for your team when people may not be following them, and this is a great way to ground the group as they all agreed upon these expectations in the beginning. It's a great way to keep everyone accountable. Now we're going to move on to working as an executive team. So first, goal setting. So why set goals? Goals help define the purpose of an organization and give direction, provide accountability, and so much more. It would be productive to set goals together within your organization. Working as a team can help communicate as well as cooperate with the group rather than being told everything. Set aside time for discussion to be sure you have your members' input. Be sure everyone's ideas are represented, and this will make your members feel accountable, supportive, and responsible. Again, this demonstrates greater commitment and motivation, clearer understanding of the wants of the organization, and overall group consensus. Then, it is important to establish SMART goals. SMART goals stand for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, and you can see that in the GIF on the screen. Utilize these 6 steps for setting goals in your organization. Brainstorm a list of potential goals, choose from the list what you want to work on, prioritize as a group which goals are most important, determine objectives of each goals with deadlines, and move into action, and eventually evaluate progress. Then it is important to develop an action plan. What needs to be done? How will this be accomplished? What are your resources in terms of people, money, and materials? Who's responsible for completing each task? What is the deadline? How will you know when it is accomplished? How will you measure the results? Action plans always allow the group to prep for their success and have clear guidelines. Now we're going to talk about decision making. Decision making is not always easy, but it happens all the time. A lot of students may not be comfortable making decisions for a group, as it can be stressful and put a lot of pressure on someone. Given how important and frequent it is important to handle it appropriately and engage those who need to be in the conversation. When making decisions for your group, you should observe those in the conversation to understand who speaks up and who does not. This can guide your future decision-making and what steps you should take to include others. For example, consider who makes decisions without checking with others. Does the group stay focused or drift from topic to topic? Who supports the decision of others? Is there a vote normally? Is there consensus normally? Does anyone make contributions that are overlooked and not recognized? These are all questions to ask yourself. There are also various types of decision-making processes to consider when leading your group. Here is a list. Unilateral decision-making, decisions made by one person without consulting the group. Hands clasp decision-making, decisions made by two members. Clique, a subgroup of the group make decisions but exclude the others based on low commitment or friendships. Baiting, a technique to reduce discussion and decisions like we all agree, right? Majority rule, a popular way to make decisions. Consensus, similar to the majority rule, but everyone knows how others feel and there should be no surprises if you vote. Consider all these types of decision making when leading your group as to see what best fits the needs of your group. Now we're going to move on to ethical decision making. Ethics are defined as what is right in a particular situation and determining what ought to be in the more basic form. Student leaders must act ethically, make ethical decisions, and promote ethical decisions in their organization. Ethical decisions are decisions that are consistent with one's personal or organizational value system. It is important to be aware of the messages you are sending by making decisions for your organization. Not all values and principles are clearly stated, so think about what your message conveys. We recommend, which may already be part of your organization's constitution, to develop a code of ethics to define the behaviors you find acceptable or unacceptable. A code of ethics sounds very serious, but this can just be general principles that you all want to follow to illustrate respect amongst one another. As you consider the ethics of your organization, consider these 5 basic ethical principles. Respect autonomy, do no harm, benefit others, be just, be faithful as in loyal, trusting, and respectful. Now we're going to move on to delegating responsibility. Delegating responsibility is a way of empowering your members. This gives them a sense of responsibility and value within the group of your project. Delegating allows for members to be more involved and keep them engaged in their membership. Involvement builds pride, commitment, and enthusiasm. This also builds trust amongst members and the team. This is also to help alleviate the leader's organization from feeling burned out with all the work or burdened. Delegating is key to success of the group as a whole and beneficial to the leaders and the general members. Things to keep in mind. Delegation is a learning process, and it is important to explain the tasks you expect of them. It could be a good idea to pair an inexperienced member with an experienced member for difficult tasks to help them develop and grow. Think about which members are best suited for a task. Do not randomly assign people tasks. Think about the interests of the group and those who have particular skills to assign properly. After assigning tasks, explain the task explicitly and mention what you want them to do and if they have creative freedom. Your team cannot read your mind, so specific direction is important. Explain the purpose of the task in the big picture. One note, just because you delegated a task does not mean that you're off the hook as a leader. It is important to support your team and check in on them as they work on a task so things come together for the final project. It is appropriate to delegate when there's a lot of work to do. Someone is qualified for a task, someone can benefit from responsibility. It is not appropriate to delegate tasks because you would not be willing to do the task. Assigning tasks to someone who is overqualified for the work is specifically your job. It is a controversial issue you don't want to address, or it's a situation where you have to change someone's behavior. Now we're going to move on to team relations. Active listening is essential to any effective leader in leading an effective organization. It is important to actively listen to all your group members to understand their ideas, thoughts, and beliefs. Active listening is different than hearing. Hearing would be considered a passive act, while listening is an active action of one trying to understand what someone else is saying. As an active listener, one puts their feelings aside to understand someone else's. Further, the active action of listening creates an atmosphere of acceptance and understanding. It is important to be present and be there to speak when others are talking. Accept the ideas you hear without judgment or reservation, as they may be different than yours. Trust the person's ability to handle their feelings and work through them. While someone else is talking, be sure not to interrupt and plan what you want to say next. Just listen. Keep yourself out of it at times. Let others share without you interrupting. Overall, active listening is essential to empathy with others and connecting even in a virtual setting. This is a unique time for everyone, so working to understand what others are thinking and feeling is important to stay connected virtually. Now we're going to move on to communication. Communication is a main element of an organization that can influence the group behavior. It is important to consider the way the way your message comes across, as it can be interpreted or in various ways and influence the group. As a leader, your communication style should be clear, provide detail, and represent the message you want. As you consider ways to communicate, it is important to make observations of important things going on with the group. This can influence your communication style when you consider who does most of the talking and who are engaged. Who do people look to when individuals speak? Individuals, the group, or no one? Does anyone interrupt often? Who keeps the ball rolling? How are those who are silent treated? Understanding and observing the influence of communication in your group can demonstrate what type of participation you will get. One indication of involvement is verbal participation or body language. It is important to observe the participation of the group to see if you can engage members in a different way, if they're not as active as others. Things to observe and consider: who are high and low participators, who talks to whom, and how are silent people treated and interpreted. Now we're going to move on to motivating and recognizing members. So it is important to recognize and motivate your members, especially in a virtual setting. This is a time where it is crucial for groups to feel the support of their leaders to keep them engaged and contributing. Here are some basic tips to motivate your members. Pay attention and learn what your members are interested in. Be a good listener and be considerate. Criticize in private and praise in public. Give credit where credit is due. Communicate your ideas with the group early on. Be positive and give members a chance to be part of the decision-making process. Be sure to respect all your members and to treat each individual equally. Communicate why as well as what to ensure understanding by all. Be sure to use praise and criticism to maximize members' abilities, and overall keep the enthusiasm and positivity high. As we've mentioned before, be sure to delegate tasks as well. Share responsibility. This brings the team together as well as gives purpose to your members. It has been subtly said, praise your members when you can. Allowing them to feel recognized is a best practice for them to connect with you as a leader and the overall group. Of course, not everything someone does is perfect, but pull them aside if you want to discuss something that they can work on. Otherwise, find ways to recognize, support, and praise the work of your team. Also, here are some ideas that you can utilize to recognize your member. A glad bag or jar. So this would be every time someone does something well or someone is grateful for something someone did, you write it in the jar. Then you choose a periodic time to read the notes to your group. You can have social media events, so like member of the day, senior spotlight Sundays, things like that. Warm and fuzzy activities have a time where people write each other anonymous notes about things they admire. You could have meals with executive members to connect you with the rest of the group. And paper plate awards, which is normally done at the end of a semester, where you recognize the best thing about someone. It could be cheesy, it could be realistic, whatever you feel. Okay. So now after you motivated them, make sure you understand how to manage conflict. Conflict occurs when individuals or groups are not obtaining what they need or want and are seeking their own self-interest. Sometimes those starting conflicts are not even aware of what they need. Other times, the individual is very aware and it's actively working toward their goals. Conflict is bound to happen, but there are various ways to handle it. There are various indicators of conflict. Examples are poor communication, seeking power, lack of openness, leadership change, surprises, lack of clear goals, and more. Conflict is not always a negative thing. Conflict can be constructive when it results in clarification of important problems and issues, results in solutions, generates authentic communication, helps release emotion and anxiety, and builds cooperation. Conflict can be negative when it takes away from other important activities, undermines morale, polarizes the group, increases differences, or leads to harmful behavior. There are techniques to resolve conflict. Examples are meeting conflict head-on, set goals, plan for and communicate frequently, be honest, agree to disagree, discuss differences in values openly, provide more information, and get individual ego out of your management style. That said, there are various behaviors that elicit resistance and various behaviors that gain cooperation. So some examples of behaviors that elicit resistance are insisting that other persons admits their wrongdoing, minimizing or ignoring others' feelings, lying, blaming others, condescending tones, and nonverbal expressions like eye rolls. Behaviors that gain cooperation include acknowledging responsibility for your part of the problem, being honest, using I statements instead of you statements, giving credit to good ideas, and making appropriate eye contact. Okay, so if we were in person or virtually in person on a video, we would be doing an engagement poll. This is another great way to engage your members. It's called Poll Everywhere. So this is a place where you can ask people to give their feedback anonymously. It could be a poll, it could be an open-ended question, it could be a word bubble where it fills in all the most popular words and makes it like a picture. There's various options, but we find that Poll Everywhere is a great way to engage your members. So team building. So the importance of team building. Remote learning is unique for all students, but so is remote team building. It can be hard for members to self-motivate as they may feel disconnected and unsupported. You may have never thought at your time as a student leader would require this, but it's important to be a resource for your members and find ways to support them as they can help you in this unique time. It is also important not to just do random team builders like you may have before because it's needed now. Find intentional space when remote members can catch up, socialize, and connect with others. This may be the only time they are chatting with others not living in their home. So utilize that time. Done well, virtual team building can help stand in for the connections and collaboration in-person working would provide. This makes your members more productive, feel cared about, and connected to others. As said above, find times for small talk. This is not something that has to be thought out too much, but finding times for socializing and casual check-ins generate bonding. They normally would chat in person, so providing the space is something they may have been lacking at home. Also, be creative. There are so many resources online for various team building activities and more. Look into it. Find things that resonate with your members and have fun with it. Okay, icebreakers and virtual activity ideas. So icebreakers have been used since the start of college, and at times can be rather tiring, especially the first week of classes, but they are important. They generate connections amongst the group in a virtual setting, and they can allow for connection and allowing for social interaction. It is also a great way to know your members on a more personal level. A list of icebreakers can be found in the Virtual Student Toolkit. The first way to use icebreakers in virtual activities is to gain participation in meetings. At the beginning of the meeting, ask the group a question, like if they could only eat one food for the rest of their life, what would it be? If they were on a deserted island, what 3 items would they bring? Questions like this generate creativity and discussion. Another starter is something like the Bud Rose Thorn. Each member has to provide something they are looking forward to, something that they are happy about now, and something that was tough this week. This will generate more participation and openness as everyone already had to talk. Then we suggest finding ways to engage members through meetings by using a Kahoot or a poll anywheres or breakout room activities at various points to gain more conversation from the group. The poll everywheres and the Kahoots were also mentioned in this presentation earlier. Another fun thing to do is make a theme for a meeting. That's what the picture is on the screen. So this provides a task for the group to dress up or pick a unique virtual background for the themed meeting. We also suggest providing virtual activities for your members outside of the meeting, whether this is a virtual coffee break / lunch break. This is not a time for an agenda, but just to hang out. Providing your members with spaces like this is really important as loneliness and minimal social interaction is happening in this virtual setting. Another option could be virtual study sessions, just to have others on a call with you. We also suggest things like game nights and watch parties to connect your group. There are tons of free games online and they can utilize like bingo, family feud, and more. This is a great way to connect your group. So another icebreaker activity is the story of our group. This is also in the toolkit, but just to explain what it means is that the leader would explain that the group is going to write a story together and start the story with one day long, long ago, there was a blank. Then they pass the story on to the next member who can add a phrase, word, or sentence to advance the story's plot. The goal is to keep it going and see how your story grows. One member should be designated to record the story for laughter later. We were going to do this as a group if we were virtually meeting, but this would be a great idea for your group to kind of lighten the mood, get people thinking, and to also kind of have this Mad Lib activity. So additional resources. There are definitely future leader shops to come. This is a video of a future leader shop that you're viewing, but there are more coming up. Depending on when you see this date, they may have completed or they may have keep going, but just be on the lookout on Get Involved and through the officer listserv for future leaderships, and there will also be leadership sessions in the future in the spring. So these are sites with more information. I'll leave this on the screen for a minute if you need to write them down. The Student Involvement Toolkit is what I mentioned earlier that has a lot of resources for virtual settings for students. The second one is virtual team building ideas for remote teams, which I use to find that the virtual meeting, like the one that has like the themed meetings. And then virtual icebreakers, bringing remote workers together, which is another site that I found that could be helpful for your group. So at this point, if we'd had any questions, you can email us at osi@echo.rutgers.edu if you do have other questions. But ultimately, this would have been a place for questions. So thank you for attending this or watching this video. Like I said, if you have further questions, please reach out to the Student Involvement Office, which the email is listed there, osi@echo.rutgers.edu. And yes, thank you so much for coming, and we hope this helps your organization thrive this semester.